The board is now reconvening following our call to order and approval of the agenda at 4:30 p.m. Tonight we have a public hearing regarding the request for a permanent easement at Washington High School. Board Secretary Day, have we received any written correspondence related to this public hearing?
We have received no written correspondence regarding this public hearing.
Do we have anyone who has requested to address the board this evening regarding the published hearing?
We have no one who's requested to address the public hearing.
Our public hearing is officially closed, and we will move on to the superintendent's report. Superintendent Bush, I'll turn the meeting over to you.
Thank you so much, President Tominski. Good evening, Board of Directors. Good evening, everyone. I just want to say thank you for all the support. I've inched my way back from 3 weeks of being at a clinical trial in Pittsburgh, and I just want to show my deepest gratitude for an amazing, amazing team that we have here in Cedar Rapids. Deputy Superintendent Quaker, our new CFO, Carla Hogan, Board Secretary Day, Executive Director Linda Nagel, our Board of Directors, our entire administrative team, and a huge, huge shout out to our IT team, who this past week has undergone a tremendous effort in securing our network from a cyber attack, and the amount of work and effort that they have put in is just amazing. I am not naming enough people, but my gratitude is huge, and glad to know that we are on our way, inching our way forward to being back up and running. So thank you for all of your support, and looking forward to our systems being full of go very soon. And so we will communicate as things progress moving forward.
Thank you for the report. Are there any board reports?
I would just like to take a moment to remind the board, please, to review the legislative priorities that we need to submit to IASB. I can resend that email out, and I do need to have your priorities identified and returned to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from those who have requested to address the board. Laurel, do we have any members of the public that have requested to address the board?
Yes, we do.
How many speakers do we have signed up for public comment?
Tonight we have 10.
Before we begin, I'd like to remind our speakers to please state your name and address for the record when called to the podium. With 10 speakers this evening, you'll be given up to 5 minutes for your remarks. Please respect the time limit allotted to each speaker. Board Secretary Day will serve as your timer and indicate when your time has expired. Since we will not be projecting, just keep an eye on Laurel. She will give you a signal if you've only got 1 minute remaining. The time is yours to use and may not be yielded to another speaker. If you have submitted a request to address the board and choose not to speak, in the interest of equity and fairness, your time may not be yielded to another speaker. In order to abide by the open meetings law, I'd like to remind our speakers that there will be no dialogue between board members and the public during this time, except to clarify the nature of questions or comments from the individuals speaking. We ask that the audience and speakers refrain from using inappropriate language and outbursts as a matter of respect for all in attendance. This board will have zero tolerance for profanity, vulgarity, demeaning language, or threats of any kind. Laurel, please call our first speaker.
Our first speaker this evening is Kate Hogue. Kate is here representing CREOPA regarding secretary wages.
Good evening, Board and Superintendent. I'm Kate Hogue, 2750 Otis Road Southeast. I'm Media Secretary at Cedar River Academy at Taylor and President of CREOPA, our Secretaries Union. Thank you. Do I need to say any of that again?
No.
Okay. Our health secretary heroes have taken on many extra duties as the district has cut nurse staffing. They manage essential medicines and health care for hundreds and triage emergencies from seizures to diabetes to broken limbs for students and staff. They are our first responders. The health secretary is often also a caring school resource providing safety, positive interactions, and access to other services that can help our students be successfully future ready. This year, this multifaceted essential service provider will be earning $16.02 an hour. We want well-trained people willing to go the extra mile in this job, and we want them to stay to build strong relationships in our buildings. We need to find the will to raise this wage. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Barb Hanson. Barb is here with regards to SROs.
I am Barb Hanson. I live in Northeast Cedar Rapids. I'm here to talk to you about SROs. First, I want to thank Deputy Quaker for all of her work on this initiative, as well as the CRPD staff that we've worked with and the board, as you have the power to decide what's next. As both a CRCSD parent and as someone who's worked closely on this audit, I want to provide my feedback. I've learned a lot over the past year and evolved even in my own feelings of best practice. This comes from collaboratively working with CRPD, state-level leadership, other districts, the students, colleagues, and many community members, as well as from extensive research. Conclusively, I feel strongly now that working with a team of SROs is to the district's benefit. It allows the opportunity to ensure alignment in restorative practices and response when the need arises, versus a street cop responding who may not have the same training or ideology. We are indeed fortunate here to have such a great group of officers who are passionate about supporting students. That being said, I don't believe we need police inside of our schools. No data I've seen, quantitative or qualitative, indicates the need or the benefit. If you want to work on restoring relationships between a community and policing, that can happen in the community where it's proven to be more effective, not in the school. My recommendation would be to listen to the educational experts who have been leading this work. Personally, I feel that you could use the SROs and have them based at CRPD and respond as needed, just as any other specialized team does, and use the extended funding on diverse restorative roles and therapists. I am not opposed to having SROs. I just feel we should collaborate to continue to improve the system and structure to move forward and not backwards. To best express how I feel, I wrote the following poem. We are here today to discuss if we need more policing at school, to determine if for behaviors, criminal charges are the best tool. You say it's political now to stay out of the way, but I say it's personal, so I'll say what I have to say. When you say to collaborate, what I hear is conform. Fall into line, you think there's nothing really to transform. Because let's be honest, who wants to address our gaps? Whether it's for behaviors or academics, no change as another year will elapse. Yet you want to celebrate success while we have kids falling through the cracks. Students we are losing to the system, that's on our backs. To me, the harm that happens in failing to address the bias at all is the biggest crisis. People are crying for help, seeing the injustices each day, but then we are pushed out of the meetings, hushing what we have to say. It's why representation is critical and lived experience too, or systemic issues replicate as privilege comes through. Here we can see the system is the problem. It's not the child, though we're always talking about their behavior. So explosive, so aggressive, so wild. Acknowledge we create what we perpetuate. Tell me I'm bad every day, I'll be bad. You show me the way. Or what if I set your desk in a corner for months? How would you feel? Does that make you behave and belong in school? No, it's their innocence we steal. Or how would you feel being triggered at age 13, then under attack, as your arms are handcuffed in school behind your back? Instead of being punitive, which we know is ineffective, for all the years of education, why can't our practice advance? Support our schools with restorative facilitators and therapists. Give these students a chance. Instead, we continue to poke and provoke, then your ego we must stroke. Adding police to this mix, what problem does that honestly fix? We can post about being anti-racist or even inclusive, but with our policies and practices, we love to demonstrate being exclusive. You are right. School is for many not safe. The school to prison pipeline causes tremendous harm. For Black children especially, for that, please sound the alarm. We can't talk about Black excellence or even Black joy. Let's just talk about how we perceive each Black girl and boy. You continue to show yourself with each decision you do or don't make. Stop saying you care. It's a facade. It feels fake. Because if you really cared, we wouldn't be here today. Students have told you what they had to say. Quantitative data shows what we already knew, but yet we continue to review. Our voices are silenced as you listen to those who align. I'm here to say, as for me, I won't co-sign. I won't fold to the pressure nor to the political force. What's happening here seems a bit coerced. Make it make sense why we demand. I'm policing when we know better. I just don't understand. Our children do deserve the best, a school that sees them for their potential, not merely as a future arrest. My advice, get yourself more counselors to start to heal the harm. Be proactive and restorative. CRCSD, you are safe to de-arm.
Our next speaker is Ture Morrow.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, my name is Ture Morrow. I live 516 15th Street, Southeast. What I like to do, how I like to spend my time, is sitting on my porch, people watching. What happens whenever I sit on my porch is that I lose count of how many police cars drive past my house. I lose count. I live in a predominantly black neighborhood. Now, I say this because what this lends to me is that, one, we were already over-policed, right? And so now we're going to take police and put them in the schools as well. The majority of school shootings, and I understand that the reasons that, one of the reasons that you guys are thinking about putting the SROs in the schools is to prevent school shootings. School shootings are predominantly committed by white males. We live in a predominantly white population. So it makes sense that you would want to put these SROs in the schools to prevent these school shootings. What does not make sense, though, is your choice to put them where the black students are, right? So what if we take the SROs and we don't put them in Washington, and we don't put them in Jefferson, and we don't put them in McKinley, and we don't put them in Roosevelt? What if we put them in, say, Prairie? There's not very many black students there, so there's not as much harm to us. I do understand the idea, the need to protect your children, right? I do understand that. But does that mean that our children are collateral damage? Because no matter what's being said, the data shows that black children suffer in these schools where there are SROs, right? That's just a fact. That's just what it is, right? So if the need for these SROs is as great as it's being portrayed, right? Why don't we just take those SROs and put them where the majority of the white students are? Because that's why they're there, right? To protect the white children from mass shootings, from school shootings, right? So why are we putting them where the largest concentration of black students are? Right? So that's the problem. That's why we're having a problem with this. Because if we understand the relationship between the SROs and these students. I work with some of these SROs, and they are wonderful people. And they do generally care about these kids. Problem is, everywhere there are SROs, black kids have large, huge criminal charges. Black kids go to jail from schools where there are SROs, right? That's just what the data shows. That's not my opinion. That's not my feelings. That's just what the data shows, right? So if it is that important to have these SROs in the schools, why don't we take them and put them where they can protect the white kids at? Let's put them in Marion. Let's put them in Prairie. Let's put them in those schools where there are very few of the black kids, because whenever you put them where there are a lot of black kids go to jail. So we got them in our neighborhood. They're in the neighborhood, mostly in the Wellington Heights community. I know that for a fact because that's where I live, and I lose count of how many drive past my house.
Excuse me, Mr. Morrow, your time is up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Harold Waliwa.
Good evening. My name is Harold Walewa, and I'm about to live at 1751 C Avenue Northeast. Thank you all for having this meeting and for allowing me to speak. I'm talking about SROs as well. So I'm a board member of the Advocates for Social Justice, and I'm sure you've noticed that we've been following this topic and issue and everything like that, but I kind of want to step away from that side of things and kind of just speak on, still as an advocate, but mostly just for the students of the BSUs at the high schools in the CRCSD. You know, as we all know, this topic was brought up because of some brave students came to speak forward to the board and to the district to talk about the issues that they were having with the SROs in schools and how they were feeling with their presence and the disproportionalities that were being shown. I just want to make sure that I know that there's the vote going on, and you know, City Council has already made their stance well known and voted on that, but making sure that we have the voices and the ideas of the students that came forward, that have been speaking at these meetings for the past year and some change, and who have really found the courage and passion to speak about their experiences on why this issue is super important. I understand that, you know, eliminating SROs is probably not going to happen in this meeting or within the next year or anything like that, but I do think that we should take the time to talk about how there are steps we could take in the future for a transitionary process. You know, I know that there's kind of like a binary when we think about SROs and no SROs, what happens to the schools and the safety and the students and things like that. But I really do think that in the future, in the near future, when we start talking about transitionary practices and how we can still appease, you know, the students that have spoken up about this and their real life experiences that have gone on with school resource officers and things of that nature. I also think that investment in diverse practices in terms of hiring more folks who do restorative justice in the schools, as well as counseling services, and kind of getting at the root issue of seeing why students, you know, might have some issues in the schools. And I know that I recently talked with a board member, Roundtree, at the Juneteenth after party event, just about, like, you know, her experiences with SROs working in the schools and things of that nature. And I really don't think that there's I know that you guys have been working really hard on this, and it's super polarized for the Cedar Rapids community. But I just want to make sure that we keep in mind, you know, the youth, the voices that are primarily affected by this every single day when they go to school. But yeah, thank you for your time.
Our next speaker is Angelina Ramirez. She's here to speak about SROs.
Hi, thank you. My name is Angelina Ramirez. I am going to move with Harold's to 1751 C Avenue after having just spent 4 years in college, moving across the country to come to Cedar Rapids, and I've made my home here. So I wasn't a student here in high school, but I am a young person in the community that acts as a mentor for many high school students and college students, freshmen coming from the Cedar Rapids Public School District. Today, I kind of want to talk about my personal experience with SROs coming from Arizona. And I think it relates because, as I mentioned, I serve in a mentorship role, and a lot of these stories carry over. And Cedar Rapids, unfortunately, is not immune, as we've seen from the data, to the harms impacted on students of color and students with disabilities here in the school district. When I was in high school, I went to a predominantly white high school in a Hispanic area. It took a long time for me to get into that school, but it was still a public school. And we had a Hispanic officer, school resource officer on campus. But at the end of the day, even if he had restorative justice practices in mind, he still worked for the Surprise Police Department, right? And at the end of the day, the police do have a culture that they maintain and that they implement, right, across the country. And we see data trends reflect this across the country, and my school was no different. And unfortunately, my school resource officer was used as an intimidation tactic. There was one time I was on the soccer team at my high school, and I used to wear an American flag bandana to every soccer game. And during a national anthem, I did a grito, mariachi yell, if you've heard that before. It's common in Mexican culture. And some of the parents from the other team called the school district and let them know that a brown girl was doing anti-American calls during the national anthem. And I got called to the principal's office. My Hispanic coach got called as well. And we both got in a lot of trouble. And the police officer, the school resource officer, was there as an intimidation tactic to tell me that if I didn't learn to be American, right, then I would get in trouble further with the school district, even if they really couldn't do anything. But the point is, he was there as a reinforcement for a culture that does not reflect what I think the school board here wants to reflect. We want to be inclusive. We want to accept all students and make them feel heard, and like we have a space for them to grow in the school district. And unfortunately, by punishing non-white students for often non-criminal behavior or normal youth behavior, it conditions not only educators, but it conditions white students to expect misbehavior from students of color and students with disabilities instead of expecting promise and excellence. I had a friend, for the purpose of this story, I'll call him Jason just for the privacy of his family. In high school, he struggled a little bit. He struggled academically. He came from a single parent household, a lower income household, and he got in trouble with the school resource officer one day for having, I think he owned a taser outside, but he never brought it on school campus, but he got in trouble because somebody had heard about it, that he had one at his house. And from that point on, he was searched every single day for 4 years from the officer that was well-known and well-liked generally from the school public. But he was searched every day, and it conditioned him to think of himself as a deviant. And when I was driving to college, I drove from Arizona all the way out here to Cedar Rapids. I got a call that after a year and a half of struggling with addiction, Jason passed away. He overdosed. And you might not think immediately that this is an effect of a school resource officer, but it's all inclusive. It all conditions one experience, right? It happens over time and it's collective. And I think it's incredibly important to notice that the harm done by well-meaning people lasts a lifetime and could have perpetual consequences, and consequences that ripples throughout an entire community that affected me here. And part of it sparked this passion of mine to look into the school to
Excuse me,
prison
Ms. Ward,
pipeline.
your time is up. Thank you.
Sure, thank you so much.
Our next speaker is Jenny Schultz. Jenny is here representing Kids First regarding SROs.
Good evening. During last week's work session, it was suggested that when it comes to SROs and community supports, it doesn't have to be either or. It can be both and. And it's catchy, but it's not true. First, the pool of money is not limitless. You can't fund everything. But more importantly, SROs are not consistent with the district's commitment to using restorative practices. With restorative practices, if two kids have a fight at school, they are taught to repair harm and given skills to do better. The message to the student is, you're not a bad kid. You made a bad choice, but you can repair it and learn from it. We care about you and we want you here. However, if two other kids get in a fight and the school calls the SRO and the students are charged with disorderly conduct and removed from the school, the message is, you don't deserve to be here. There is no such thing as a restorative arrest. Using inconsistent discipline sends a mixed and confusing message to kids. Consistency is the key to effective and equitable discipline. You've heard from lots of people throughout the last year, but we are here because of students on the inside who raised this issue. Students are the people most impacted by your votes. Most of them will never come to a school board meeting. But here is what high school students in our district have to say, and these are their written, unedited comments. Seeing the police with guns, tasers, and handcuffs while I'm just trying to go to class makes me uneasy. I should go to school excited to learn, not fearful of being victim to the school to prison pipeline. The police sending in SROs to be nice to students only means that kids really won't be prepared for actual interactions. I've never spoken to the SROs in my school, but seeing them around with their guns and their surveillance of students makes it hard for me to focus on my studies because I'm focusing on my survival. The money spent on bringing in SROs so they walk and talk could be spent on resources to actually help students. Teachers go to school for years to be around teenagers, but SROs get 9 weeks. The SRO in my school arrested a student without reading their rights. It was disgusting. My friend and I were walking around the halls after school ended. We were going to our lockers to grab some things we left behind and noticed an SRO following us. He asked what we were doing and we told him, but he had his hand on his gun the whole time, and it made me feel very unsafe. Even the buddy system seemed not to work. It's simply unnecessary. They don't prevent fights and they escalate crime. Their presence has made it unsafe for me at school, a place I should find comfort in, growing my curiosities and knowledge, but instead find myself having to be overcautious of how I present myself as to not end up as another mere statistic. These students want to be heard. Please show them their voices matter. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Laura McBride. Laura is here to speak about school resource officers.
Hello, and thank you, Laura McBride. My address is in Marion, Iowa. Just moved there. I am an alum of the school district, the Cedar Rapids Community School District. I've lived in this community for over 40 years. I have been engaged with our district for 20 plus years in school PTAs, athletics, performing arts, IJAG, and much more. I'm deeply committed to this community. I choose to live in Iowa, and I choose to send my kids to the Cedar Rapids Community School District. I've got 4 children. One just graduated from the University of Iowa, 2 are at the University of Iowa, and my last is a senior at Washington High School. We spent 7 years at McKinley Middle School after the kids left Erskine, and we are in our 9th year at Washington High School. I have so much pride for our city and so much pride for our district. And I recognize the incredible role that each of you serve in a volunteer capacity in our community. This SRO topic has, I think somebody mentioned divisive. It's shown a spotlight. A couple points that I just want to share this evening are this. I think we have to step back and really think about what do we owe to our families and to our students holistically. It's not just about SROs, it's about the educational experience that our district is offering and providing to help set our kids up for the best success. They are the future of our community. They're our future citizens, they're our future workforce, and we owe it to them to provide the best possible support system outside of academics. We ask a lot of our teachers. Increasingly over time, we've asked our teachers to do more and more as it relates to managing behavioral issues of our kids. We know our kiddos. There are more and more needs. As a long-term board member of Tanager Place, I have been advocating for more and more mental health resources in our schools. I do want to share that while I respect a lot of different perspectives about the role of the SRO in our schools, I have seen a lot of positives and a lot of things working well within McKinley and Washington. I can't speak for the other schools. The relationships that I have seen Officer Pazer, Officer Watts, Officer Deitmeyer make with our kids have been immense. All kids across the board in these schools. The way they show up and participate in activities, I see them at farmers markets engaging with kids. I see kids hugging officers in our schools. I see the relationships that they're building, and from what I understand, people don't believe that relationships are being built. I see them, I go to the school, I spend time there. I do know it's happening. Secondly, I would just say that the role of the SRO should and can evolve. But the bottom line is that we've got situations that are happening that are very unsafe and are very scary. Drugs, knives, guns, chairs being thrown at teachers, teachers being held across their neck by students, incredible mass fights happening in hallways at McKinley and Washington High School. It is so dangerous to put any one of our staff members, any one of our teachers in the position that are there to teach our kids. That's not their role. We need more of a holistic support system, and I do believe the SROs have a role in a broader network to help our students. I'm understanding by the way the contract reads today that there is some level of support for continuing in the high school and that we've got floaters in the middle school. I just would advocate that when I talked to my kids and their friends about this topic last night, who all went to McKinley and all went to Wash, things are happening at the middle school level, probably at far greater levels than the high school, that are dangerous. I think we need to take a more proactive stance at a younger age in the relationship development, providing safe environment, a more holistic support system around our staff and our students in the schools, and we shouldn't wait until high school to do it. The more proactive we can be at an earlier age, I think the more we can prevent and help solve issues and solve problems and help our kids be successful in life. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sophia Joseph. Sophia is representing Advocates for Social Justice, and she's here to speak about SROs.
Sophia Joseph, 2017 Grand Avenue Southeast. And I am, yes, both my kids attend the school district, and I am treasurer for Advocates of Social Justice. First, I would start off with saying that I'm concerned about this process, particularly this year. I think it's rather bizarre that the Cedar Rapids Police brought a contract to the school district when the school district is the one contracting a service from the police department. So that seems bizarre. Additionally, I think it's really weird that the city council chose to vote on something that we elect this board to do, not what we elect them to do. If they were to approve a contract because they, budget the police department, that's one thing, but for them to vote on something before the school district voted on it, like highly unusual and quite disturbing, and it certainly does add this element of politics and pressure and many other things that just don't seem appropriate in a decision made for schools and for children. With 2 SROs no longer going to be in this position, it seems like the right time to go down to the SROs just being in the high schools and not having the floaters. That seems like an appropriate step. Seems like the Cedar Rapids Police Department was a little fearful that that might be the logical step, and so therefore they have kind of pushed themselves on in this process. It's all very concerning. Saw pictures of the SROs in the schools, dressed to the nines in military with their khakis on. I thought the idea was to get them to be out of uniform at the school. I guess my thought was that that might include a gun on the hip, but in the pictures I just saw very recently, there they are, head to toe, like they're going to war in our schools. Disturbing, disgusting, and I get uncomfortable when I see cops like that. I get uncomfortable. I cannot imagine learning in an environment where it looks like somebody is going to war. Anyways, my father lives in Germany. He came here and saw it and was so disturbed. He said, nowhere else in the whole world do we do this to our children. What's wrong with America? Again, school shootings. I know the mayor wanted to talk about that as she pushed herself on a decision that she had no business making. School shootings. Schools with SROs have 3 times more deaths. It's 3 times more lethal. When somebody is showing up to shoot up a school, guess what? 1 cop isn't stopping it. Not only that, they are coming more armed, more bullets, more prepared because they know somebody is armed. The statistics show that 3 times more people die in a school with an SRO. We also know that 5 times more students are arrested in SRO. So all of the data shows that this is a short-minded, political, pressured decision because there is no amount of data. There is no data that supports these decisions. This is fear-based, it's fear-mongering, and if we were to be completely honest, it's privilege, right? This is a privileged few, a privileged group of people that are scared. So they're using everything they can, and just like Therese said, to make the black and brown children collateral damage, to make people feel safer for something that is literally not making the children safer. And as Therese pointed out, if we are scared of school shootings, it's not the black kids shooting up the schools. So get the SROs out of the black schools and go put them in the white schools if that's the fear. It's inappropriate and it's full of crap, quite frankly. There's nothing, none of it's true. None of it's panning out. None of the excuses are doing anything other than fear-mongering. That's what it is. It's a huge public display of fear-mongering. Coaches, mentors, therapists, paras, people who care, that's what changes people's behavior. Not scaring them and putting them in fear and turning small school things into big things. And I get that there are some scary things going on at schools, but it doesn't take much longer for a police officer to get to a school than it does for one to run. McKinley's huge. I went to McKinley too. I had a lot of those same problems that were just described happen at McKinley when I was there, but there wasn't armed police officers looking like they're going to war patrolling the hallways. The police department is also pretty close to McKinley. I'm assuming you can get a police officer there relatively quickly. The police officers are not proactive from anything I've seen. You're not, right there when the fight happens, they're not able to stop it. People that sit down with children and talk about what is going on at home, what is going on in this relationship, what can we do to restore this, that is proactive. That is helpful. Additionally, the cost is insane. The school district's paying, over $100,000 per police officer, or that's the cost, or over $100,000 each, like $115,000. I think Tanager Place is lending counselors for like $12,000 to $15,000. It was between 10 and 15. So you're talking about that we could have, seven counselors from Tanager Place for the cost of 1 SRO?
Time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Craig Seeley. Craig is here to speak about ideologies, agendas, sources, teaching methods.
Laura, please tell me verbally when there's 1 minute left, okay?
Yes.
This is so big, so gigantic. It's not only one country, it's international. And there's a lot more going on than meets the eye. And I know some of your people sitting at the board will just sit there like they're bored to death because they don't agree. But look at what we've done throughout our history. Our first book was the Bible. How many people in this country know that they're accountable to the God of the Bible, the triune God of the Bible? How many kids actually know that? How many kids actually know the triune God created everything? And that's where we get our blessings, but we can also get his cursings. He did it to his chosen people. When they became corrupt enough, he let their enemies come in and take them over. It happened in AD 70. And before that, it was the Babylonian Empire instead of the Roman Empire. So God's only going to take so much. He gave us the 10 Commandments about 5,000 years ago. What's the first commandment? Thou shalt have no other God before the God of the Bible, before him. Why? Because God loves us and wants to protect us, and Scripture is there to protect us. And he will give you the power to be obedient to it. But we think we're smarter than our Creator. So we take him out. We take out prayer. We take out as much as we can. We lie about the separation of church and state in the Constitution. It isn't there. The First Amendment says, Congress shall make no law establishing a religion, nor denying the free exercise thereof. How many students even know about that? Do you know, according to researchers, we are in the 3rd generation of students being history illiterate. No wonder they're attacking our government and being easily persuaded. When we've had a constitution that has lasted more than 200 years, the average length of a constitution in the world is 17 years. There must be something good about it, but now we have a regime that wants to ruin everything, destroy it, our founding documents, all the history of our founding fathers, anything that replicates what has happened throughout the history of our country, because they want to start over from scratch. What is their scratch? A lot of people there are saying that these tactics come from the Marxist agenda to take over a country without firing a shot. Because we are this nation that stands in the way of every other type of ideology that reduces or destroys freedom. So we have this gigantic debate now about SROs. Well, every speaker has said a lot of good things, but we have hundreds of thousands of immigrants coming into our country right now that aren't being vetted. And we don't know where they're going to end up. We don't even know their backgrounds. 5 seconds. How much time do I have left?
Just about a minute.
5 seconds. Less than 5 seconds. And we could have 3 students in any one of our buildings shot dead if a predator got through. Because you can point a gun and shoot it quicker than 5 seconds. And then what would we do? What would we do if that happened? We're seeing all these horrific things all over this country and in the world that's happening in school systems. And then so many people show up and so much discussion. But I can't even hardly stand to talk about it. But those students will never breathe another breath. I still believe, and a lot of good things were said, that every person working in a school building should have some instrument to immediately incapacitate
Thank you.
a predator. Think about that.
Our next speaker is Bernard Clayton.
I'm Bernard Clayton. I live at 1604 6th Avenue Southeast. And I'm going to ask some questions. I know y'all can't respond to questions, but I want you to think about the questions I'm going to ask you. First thing, this is a tale of two cities. And first, I'm going to give the definition of white supremacy racism. The definition of white supremacy racism is the right to dominate and to mistreat African Americans and other people of colors. That's done in a number of ways, and sometimes it's not always did with a curse word or a mean face. But there's a lot of ways that system works. Now, under this system, and I'm going to ask y'all this question, and I know you can't answer, but do you feel, in the system of white supremacy racism, when black people say they have a problem, it's taken as being whining and not being a legitimate problem? If that's in your mind, well, we're not going to solve this problem. And then the next thing about the school resource officers, I read in the newspaper article that they weren't wearing the uniforms that y'all asked them to wear. Now, I think what y'all should do, on any day they don't wear the uniform, the city should give you back $1,000 at least. That's how you should deal with that, $1,000 each. And also, the school board is part of the group violence intervention. I suggest you read page 23. And on page 23 of that book, it's just a little short blurb about school resource officers. School resource officers should be used to gather information from inside the school, so they serve as an intelligence function. I read the group violence implementation books. I read both of them. It's good reading, but you policymakers should make a point to read them. And again, how much time I got?
Just under 3 minutes.
Okay, I want to be fair. And again, in terms of safety in schools, again, I'm going to repeat this where I acknowledge them. In the state of Iowa, a police officer does not have the duty to respond. I hope it never happens. But if you do have an incident and your lawyer did not bring up a case that came out of Cedar Rapids that went to the Iowa Appeals Court, you probably should fire your lawyer. And again, and then another thing, we always say we hire black people to work in the schools, and throughout it, we still have the same problem. So are we hiring black employees, and are we marginalizing them, or are we simply hiring people to act as agents to continue the problem? So, and again, one of the things that people assume about education, that education is to help people. Really, in reality, education is to eliminate people. That's the whole idea, and I know that may be a novel concept to you, but if you think deeply about it, but you might catch what I'm saying. So it's important for our kids to be safe. It's important for our kids not to be going to prison from school, but also it's important from kindergarten to teach citizenship. I was taught citizenship when I went to school, and I went to all black school, and I was told when I went to Cold College I was culturally deprived. Now, I come from the inner city of St. Louis with a bunch of ignorant black educators. But these ignorant black educators, these inferior people, knew how to teach us citizenship. And it was taught to us through the whole time. Now, if those people in the inner city of St. Louis over 50-some years ago, as lacking as we are in abilities, if they could teach citizenship, why can't y'all teach citizenship? And again, I know y'all can't talk about racism. The governor's made it illegal for y'all to talk about it, but y'all can talk about fairness. And I wish that the government would make it illegal for the application of racism in this state. Thank you for your time.
That concludes our speakers. Thank you.
Moving on to our consent agenda, are there any items that a board member would like to pull for a comment, question, or separate vote?
President Tominski, I'd like to pull the 28E agreement with the City of Cedar Rapids, PA 23039.
For a separate vote?
Separate vote, I'd also like to make a motion regarding that item.
Okay. Are there any other items? Laurel, I think we'll first vote on the rest of the consent agenda, and then we'll vote second on that.
And it's a roll call vote due to the personnel report.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. And this is a roll call vote.
Director Borgenay. Director Humbles. Director Roundtree. Director Newman. Director Merschbach.
Aye.
President Tominski.
Aye. So separately, we'll vote on BA 23-039. That is the 28E agreement with the City of Cedar Rapids and the SRO program.
And I'd like the motion to amend the language of the 28E agreement, specifically Article 3 of the agreement, duties of the police department, Section A. It would be line 5 of that section. The sentence beginning, 2 additional CRPD officers will be non-school specific SROs. I'd like to strike the remaining part of that paragraph from beginning with that sentence to the end of the paragraph in Section A. That would reduce the number of SROs from 7 to 5. And additionally, in Article 5 regarding financing the school resource officer program, line 5 of that regards the 50% cost shared by the school district. I'd like to reduce that by the appropriate amount to reflect that the district would be sharing the cost of 5 rather than 7 SROs.
Just to be clear, where the contract that's in front of us is for 7 SROs, and your change would make it 5, and then looking at reducing the cost by just the same amount of the cost of those 2 additional SROs.
Laurel, did you get the specifics on that? Okay.
Article 3, Section A, line 5.
We have a motion on the table.
To follow up with that, you are asking to amend it, so the vote will be on whether to amend, not on whether to approve. If we then amend it, then we will have a separate vote to approve? Correct. Thank you.
So I want to make sure. So Director Merschbach, you're amending, saying that we would reduce to 5.
Reduce to 5, leave everything else the same, including the schools specifically listed. So we would have 5 SROs at the schools listed in the 28 agreement, AE agreement as it is now.
I'm so confused. So do we need someone to second it?
The motion is on the floor.
It's on the floor. Well, I second.
Okay. With a second, are there any questions, comments about the motion?
Make on the motion. So our goal is to make sure that every learner is future ready. Did I say that right, Superintendent Bush? And right now, in just the environment that we're in, it is also our goal to keep them safe so that they can be future ready. I don't believe that this amendment and that this change in the contract keeps children any safer. I can't predict the future. I want to support our teachers and I want to support our students. If it were up to me, I would probably say on a day-to-day basis that the district should decide where those 2 floaters would go based on incidents and need and what's going on out there in the community that not all of us are privy to on a daily basis. But I personally feel we need all 7 officers at this point in time. If our job were only to educate children and that would do the trick, we'd have a 100% success rate. But kids come to us with a host of different challenges and different lived experiences, some of it good, some of it bad. It's the wonder of the public education system, but it's also the great challenge. And right now, without the supports in place, and last year when we voted on this, we said we want supports in place. Did we put those supports in place? Did we do something to make it safer for kids? I don't think we're there yet. So that's my personal feeling. I don't think that eliminating the 2 floaters is in our students' best interest, and I don't think it makes them safer.
Any additional comments from board members?
I would like to make an additional comment there. I do think that there are many layers and different ways to keep students safe. I think that being available emotionally to students, to having people that are trained professionals to help students deal through difficult circumstances, where their training in child psychiatry, child therapy comes first, not being a police officer comes first, is a better service to our students. I've asked questions and they've been answered, that the same services that are provided now by SROs can be provided for free by us calling 911 or the police non-emergency number. I think it's responsible for us as a board to use that funding elsewhere to support students in their intellectual and their emotional growth.
I'd like to add that that was our direction last year, and we really haven't changed anything, and you can't just flip a switch. If we had programming ready to go, ready to roll, that we felt confident was going to change things for our students. When you talk to people who run social services organizations, we say, what would it take to hire more people? And they say, hire who? You know, you can't hire psychiatrists. It's hard to hire a psychologist. It's hard to hire a licensed social worker. Do I think that that's where we should be? Do I want to be at a place where we don't need SROs in schools? Absolutely. That is the goal, and I want our children to be safe and not have to have them there. But we haven't done anything since we said we would do it last year to change it. So we're going to flip a switch and it's going to be fine? I'm not confident in that. And I'm not willing to gamble with kids.
Any additional comments? We'll call the motion to a vote. We'll do a roll call.
Director Borcherding?
Aye.
Director Garlock?
Aye.
Director Humbles?
Aye.
Director Roundtree?
No.
Director Newman?
No.
Director Merschbach?
Aye.
Director Tominski, excuse me, President Tominski?
No.
Motion passes.
Motion passes. So we will vote on the actual agreement with the amendment that was proposed by Director Merschbach and passed by this board. We'll do a roll call vote.
Director Garlock? Director Humbles?
Aye.
Director Roundtree?
No.
Director Newman?
No.
Director Merschbach?
Aye.
Director Borcherding?
Aye.
President Tominski?
Aye.
You're good.
The final two agenda items are for the appointment and oath of office for our board secretary and board treasurer. Do we have a motion for the appointment of our board secretary? So moved. Is there a second? Second. This is a roll call vote.
Director Humbles?
Aye.
Roundtree?
Aye.
Director Newman? Aye. Director Merschbach? Aye. Director Borcherding? Aye. Director Garlock? Aye. President Tominski?
Right here? Yeah. Just making sure it's working. Perfect. Do you, Laurel A. Day, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that you will faithfully and impartially, to the best of your ability, discharge the duties of the Office of Secretary of the Cedar Rapids Community School District in the County of Lynn, State of Iowa, as now and hereafter required by law? If so, please respond by saying, I do. Congratulations.
Thank you.
The snapping for you does seem appropriate.
I love the snaps.
Yeah. Do we have a motion for the appointment of the board treasurer?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. This is a roll call vote.
Director Roundtree? Aye. Director Newman?
Aye.
Director Merschbach?
Aye.
Director Borcherding?
Aye.
Director Garlock?
Aye.
Director Humbles?
Aye.
President Tominski?
Aye. Carla? Do you, Carla Hogan, solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that you will faithfully and impartially, to the best of your ability, discharge the duties of the Office of Secretary of the Cedar Rapids Community School District in the County of Lynn, State of Iowa, as now or hereafter required by law? If so, please respond by saying, I do. Congratulations.
New tradition, new tradition.